So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Where are you joining us from?
From home, yeah.
From
We're waiting until tomorrow before we could start to move about a bit. But at the moment, yeah, I'm at home.
Yeah. So, okay. And where is home for those? So, whereabouts you live?
The Rhondda Valley.
Okay.
Yeah, South Wales.
South
I
Wales.
mean, a lot of people outside of Wales sort of think of Wales as the valleys, but actually they're just a small part, but a very important part of South Wales. And the Rhondda Valley is the centre sort of valley of the valleys. You know, it's the place where all the coal mines were.
Right. And actually, Chris's role at the moment, your job at the moment, is working with sort of school age rugby coaching. Is that right? Or what,
yeah, I'm a Welsh Rugby Union development officer.
Right. Okay. And actually, you were saying to me earlier today that you've been on furlough, and it hasn't been a particularly easy time in that rugby has not been happening in the Rhondda Valley, and that's brought its difficulties.
Yeah. Well, I think it's brought home to all of us really that's involved in rugby how much rugby means to the kids in the valley, because obviously they haven't been able to play or train, they've just been able to do a little bit of training last summer, but they haven't been able to play at all since last March, and so it's a year now, and sadly, you know, quite a few of them have got themselves into problems. The drug problem around here is huge. It just seems that you know, these type of areas are targets for drug gangs from up in London and Birmingham, and some of the boys have got themselves into real problems, not just with addiction but with drug dealing. And they were this organization called County Lines. I never even knew who they were, but apparently they're like gangsters from London who sort of target vulnerable kids. And some of the boys have really got themselves into serious problems.
And actually, so actually the fact that they're not being able to play rugby has meant that the devil's made work for idle hands. Is that kind of...
Yeah. I mean, we've actually heard from teachers, from parents, distraught mothers, saying that when they had rugby, when they were training a couple of times a week and going to the gym, playing games on the weekend, they had none of these problems. But now, without that, yeah.
Now, look, Chris, obviously today you're someone who follows and loves and serves the Lord Jesus, and actually that was not always the case. And actually, look, let me just show you a picture. Here is Chris in his heyday. Is that right? Is this you in your heyday, Chris?
Well, sort of. I probably slimmed down a bit for that.
Look at that. Chris Jones is innocent. You can tell us a little bit about what that top and is all about in a moment, but tell us about how your love for rugby started, and you know, have you always been a Christian, or tell us your story, Chris.
Yeah, right. So I haven't always been a Christian, and I said I come from the Rhondda Valleys, the place of the coal mines, and growing up in the 60s, some of the mines were still open, and it was a tough environment. And, you know, I just realized early on that if I wanted respect in this community, then you either had to be good at rugby or fighting or drinking. And I was never much good at drinking, but the other two I wasn't bad at, you know, and I enjoyed. In fact, when I got introduced to rugby at the age of 11, I couldn't believe that they'd invented a game like rugby where you could get away with what you could get away with without getting arrested. I thought, wow, that's brilliant. This is a game for me. I was quite a successful schoolboy rugby player, and I was a real fitness fanatic, and running and weight training, and I managed to get into the Wales under 15 squad and Wales under 19 squads. And people said that one day I would play for Wales, and I didn't. And I had a major, major problem. I was that I absolutely hated losing, and I would do anything to win. And I'm sure the guys listening in, are involved in sport some way or other. And you think, well, yeah, I can understand that. I don't like losing, but I really didn't like losing. It was, I don't know, it was a serious problem for me. It really was a serious problem. And I would kick, punch, gouge, stamp on his face. And I'm not trying to glorify violence here at all, but that's the way I played the game. And obviously, as rough a game as rugby is and was, and it was, in those days, especially in the valleys, it was a much more violent game than it is today. The collisions weren't as big because obviously in a professional area, you're talking about big professional athletes. But what you did have was some old guy refereeing the game, no linesman, no television cameras, not very often television cameras. Linesmen were often someone from your committee. And so, you could just almost get away with murder on a field. And, and of course, if you got caught, then, you get sent off. Well, I got caught a lot, so it shows how dull I was. But I did cross a line of what was acceptable. And so I got sent off regularly in schoolboy rugby, in youth rugby. By the time I started playing senior rugby, I gained this reputation as a tough guy. It became more important to me in the end to live up to the reputation than it did to win a rugby game. Anyway, I sort of hit the Welsh rugby headlines back in 1982. That was when the team I was playing for, on a Boxing Day, were playing in the local derby against the village team just up the road. And I say playing, really had very little to do with play. It was just absolute warfare. 30 guys entertaining a Christmas crowd, kicking lumps out of each other. And this particular game, I got sent off again, and I ended up striking a referee, refusing to leave the field. I was an idiot, but obviously the Welsh Rugby Union weren't happy, and they banned me for 6 months, which is the biggest ban around. And then I played a couple of games then after my ban was lifted 6 months later. And then the team I played for, Treorchy, was drawn against Cardiff, Cardiff Rugby Club, which is like the Man United of Welsh rugby, if you like, with all the British Lions and Welsh internationals playing for them. This will Gareth Edwards and Barry John and those boys play. And anyway, so we were drawn against them up in Treorchy at home. And 4 of us got sent off in a really violent match. I was the first one to go after 20 minutes. And obviously, and it was on television. This particular match was on television because it was Cardiff, and the Welsh Rugby Union had enough of me, and they banned me for life. My own club banned me for 5 years. And, really, truly, in front of my friends, I acted as if it was a big joke, and, acted as a tough guy, as I said. But I was really heartbroken because I loved playing rugby. And then 18 months later, I bumped into someone from the Welsh Rugby Union. They asked me how I was getting on. I told them that I was still banned, which was, they said it was the longest ban that they'd heard of. No one had been banned for 18 months. So if I wrote a letter of appeal in, they would allow me back to play. So I did. And in fairness to the WRU, they allowed me back to play, but I played a handful of games again and got into trouble again, badly injured a player, threat of legal action. And so the Welsh Rugby Union had no option but to ban me for life a second time, which, so I got the dubious record of being the only rugby player in world rugby, as far as we know, that's been banned for life twice. Then that sort of coincided with my brother Clive coming home from university to take up the role of player coach for Torquay. And because I was banned, he asked me to help him coach the forwards. And so we coached our local village team. We were quite successful. And then we had the opportunity then to go and coach Pontypridd, one of the big teams of Welsh rugby. And I had a great time down there. Great time in Pontypridd coaching. Introduced the likes of Neil Jenkins, who you may have heard of, and others, Dale McIntosh maybe, and others, into top flight rugby. But I have to say that when I was there, I did used to think, is this it? Is this what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? And there's got to be more to life than this. I love doing what I'm doing, but is this all I'm going to do? Just play rugby, coach rugby, die. And I used to think and ponder these things. My mates, and I've obviously spoke to them a lot about it since, they say, you didn't think like that, Chris, that's not the way you thought. But actually it was. And the only sort of meaning to life, if you like, that I could come up with was that there's no meaning. Just go out and have a good time, blow the consequences. And if people get hurt in the meantime, in the process, well, that's just tough. Problem with that as well was that I was married. I married when I was young and had 3 small children. But I hardly saw them really, because I was always out, either involved with rugby coaching or drinking. I got involved in the drug scene, not heavy drugs, but marijuana and speed and things like this. And it was really just having one long party, if you like. And, I could go out on a Friday and maybe not come back home till Monday morning to go to work. And eventually, I living that life. I eventually ended up in the Brecon Jazz Festival. I don't know if you know about Brecon's a small town in mid Wales, where every year they have a jazz festival. I don't think I'd ever listened to a jazz record in my whole life, not as far as I knew. But I heard there was a good crack, as we said, up there. Packed town, plenty of fun, drink, drugs, whatever. Havoc. And so I went up with a group of guys from the Rhondda, and we did cause havoc. And to cut a very long story short, I got arrested for being involved in a fight in a pub with a guy who turned out to be an undercover drug squad officer. And I was charged with wounding with intent and violent disorder. And there were 7 uniformed policemen who were willing to testify that I was kicking his head in on the floor and I'd stabbed him. Well, I hadn't done it. Would I have done it if I thought that he'd injured a friend of mine? Would I have done it? Absolutely, yes. And I used to say, when the red mist come down, I would just do anything. But I didn't do it. I was grappling with him, and before I could even punch him, before I could even hit him, I was arrested by police and taken down to Brecon police cells. So I was just stuck in a cells, and I thought it was a big joke, first of all, until I heard, what I was being charged with. I had no witnesses to say that I hadn't done it. And I was facing a jail sentence, 5 years maybe, or more. And apparently was badly injured. So I was allowed a phone call home to my wife. My clothes had been taken off me for forensic evidence. I was covered in blood. And she came up to Brecon to give me a change of clothes because I was due to go to court the next morning, on a Monday morning. And I remember her saying, you know, she was upset, but that's the way, you know, we lived our lives. I lived my life, you know, browse and maybe smashing the door in to come in after I've been locked out and things like this. But the thing that really got to me was saying the children were asking when they were going to see me again. And I was thinking, well, the next time they're going to see me is down in Swansea jail. And it really affected me. Just that thought, because for all the stupid things I'd done, I hadn't actually gone to jail. And I went back to the cells and I thought about it, and I thought, you know, I was frightened, but most of all, I was ashamed. And it seemed like that everything that I'd turned my hand to, I'd wasted, you know, I'd been a waster in. And I walked the cell back and forth, and I was thinking, how can I get out of this? I can't fight my way out of it. I can't talk my way out of it. What can I do? And for literally hours, I walked and I thought, and there were two other guys sleeping in a cell. I was thinking, what can I do? And I just thought, well, there's nothing. God help me. And as soon as I come to that point, God help me, it just sort of thought struck me, God help me. I don't even believe in God. Or sometimes I did, and sometimes I didn't. At that time, I didn't. But that didn't help. And then I thought, well, if there, you know, and what I'm trying to say in, you know, 10, 20 minutes or whatever, literally took hours. But then I was thinking, well, if there is a God, why would he want to help someone like me? And then I just thought, I thought, you know, God, I'm sorry for, if you are there, and I'm walking the cell back and forth, not even mouthing his words, because I didn't want to wake the two guys up. They think I'm going off my head. But I was thinking, you know, if you are there, I really am sorry for the way I've lived my life, for the people that I've hurt, you know, especially my own family. And I just came to the point in the end of saying, I want to change. I really do want to change. I've had enough of living life like this, of continually being involved in trouble, bringing trouble to the home. I mean, I never ever hit my wife. She normally ended up hitting me when I was stoned and that. But, you know, it wasn't any way to live at all. And I just thought, I really do want to change. And God, if you are there, help me to change. And if you do help me to change, then I'm gonna go your way. That's the actual words I sort of mouthed, if you like. And what that meant exactly, I don't know. I really don't. But I've never meant anything so much in my whole life. I didn't have my hands in the air. I wasn't on my knees praying. But I've never meant anything so much in my whole life. I saw no flashing lights. I heard no choirs of angels. But it was a feeling of, it felt good. It was a feeling of good. It felt right. It felt clean, which I hadn't felt for a long time. And it was a feeling of, this is it. This is what you've been looking for, Chris. I went to court next morning, handcuffed to a policeman who was very nice, but he was saying, obviously, we're going to take you up to Swansea jail now on remand. And amazingly, the clerk of court was going nuts, and he was saying, we've got to put this man down. But he and the magistrate went out to the room, came back in, and then the magistrate said, right, we're going to give you conditional bail, like a tag, I suppose they call it today. And it meant that I could go home. I did have to go back to Crown Court 8 months later, but it did mean that I could go home. And it meant that I could find out more about this experience that I'd had in the cells on a Sunday night. So I remember coming home on a Monday. My wife nearly fainted when she saw me, and she wasn't very happy at all. And I can remember telling her, hold on, let me just tell you about what happened on Sunday night. And she said, listen now, boy, you made some excuses for staying out. But God, you were having no chance. But it was real to me. And I went down to, I thought, right, I can't go to church because it's Monday. So church is open on Sunday. So I'll go around to see the vicar, because there's a big Anglican church just around from me. There's loads of chapels everywhere here, but it was actually nearest to me. It was a big Anglican church, and I thought I'd go to see the vicar. And I went over to see the vicar, absolutely terrified, you know, and I think he was as well when he saw me at the door. But he was lovely, and he invited me in, and we spoke, and I tried to explain to him what had happened in the cell. And he invited me to church, and he said, have you read the Bible? And I said, well, I have at different times when I was younger, maybe in school, but I don't understand it. And he said, well, look, here's a Bible. And he said, read the gospel stories, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And he said, pray, ask God to help you to understand it. And I'm like, what? What do you mean pray? You know, our Father or whatever? He said, no. He said, just like you're talking to me, talk to God and ask him. I thought, right, okay, I'll try it. And so I went home and I started to read, and what I read absolutely blew my mind, because I thought, wow, there's much more to this Jesus Christ than a little picture on a Christmas card. And I read, you know, I remember reading the story of when he was sleeping on the boat, when Jesus was sleeping on a boat with his fishermen friends on the lake, and the storms came. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. He's, you know, he's cool. He's sleeping through this. I thought, wow, good. And then I read about when he went into the temple and he threw the tables over, the money changers' tables. And I thought, wow, he's really hard. That really appealed to me. He's an hard case, because I thought, imagine going down to Pontypridd Market and chucking over the tables down there with all the traders. You know, I wouldn't have done that. And then obviously you read about how he met how he stood up to be counted, the courage he showed, the bravery he showed, and right to the point of his death, when really that's all he had to say was, no, look, you got the wrong man, it's not me. But he didn't. And I just thought, wow, this is really someone worth following, worth committing your life to. What I experienced in our cell, wow. Because I realized that you could know this God that I'd sort of spoken to, I suppose, prayed to, I suppose, on our Sunday night. You could know God by knowing Jesus. And actually, I come to the point of just recognizing that Jesus Christ is who the Bible says he is. He really, truly is the Son of God. Or he's the biggest liar or the biggest lunatic this world has ever seen. And, you know, anyone who reads, for example, the words of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7 of the Gospel of Matthew, just realize that, you know, as Mahatma Gandhi said, they may be the greatest words that's ever been written. Those words weren't spoken by a lunatic or a liar. Those words changed countless millions, probably millions of lives. It's changed whole movements. The slavery movement, the slavery situation in England, the civil rights movement in America. The words of the Sermon on the Mount were the big influence. So yeah, so that's my story about how I became a Christian. I got involved in an organization called Christians in Sport, And really what we try to do is to show people that when you become a Christian, you don't grow 2 heads or 3 legs or anything else. We're the same people on the outside. We believe that Jesus Christ has changed our hearts on the inside. And through Christians in sport, and I sort of come to meet a lot of guys who were absolutely top-class sportsmen, who love sport the same as I love sport, but who love Jesus Christ as well, or love Jesus Christ even more. And it's interesting that, you know, in my sport of rugby, there's, you know, maybe not so much in this country, but certainly in places like South Africa, New Zealand, the South Sea Islanders, there are many rugby players who are Christians, born-again Christians. And it's interesting as well that, for me, it was interesting that 2 of the toughest rugby players probably of the last 20 years, Bakis Botha of the Springboks and Brad Thorne of the All Blacks, were absolutely committed Christians. And were they perfect? Are they perfect? No. But thankfully, Jesus Christ never came for perfect people. He came for the rest of us, all of us really, have got issues and problems in life. That's why Jesus came. And yeah, you know, I mean, I just think I just want to make it clear. I mean, I could go on and on. So Andy, you just interrupt me, but I do want to make it clear that what I'm talking about here is not religion, because we all know that religion causes wars and it causes so many problems in the world and has done and that. What I'm talking about is a personal relationship between a human being and God. That's what really Christianity is. It's about a relationship between a human being and God. And that's all I would finish with, really, is just to say that I really believe that it is only that personal relationship with God that can give you the inner peace, inner contentment, inner fulfillment, and meaning, and true meaning deep down. I tried most of the things that the world has had to offer, and none of them give me the peace and fulfillment and contentment that I got now, because of the personal relationship I have with God through Jesus Christ. And yeah, I recommend him to you guys.
Well, look, Chris, what I'm going to say, so that is brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It is utterly dramatic, the transformation that actually meeting Jesus and that moment in the cell sort of brought. And what I'm going to say to people is, we will draw stumps in 5 minutes. So if you want to ask any questions on Slido of Chris, maybe about anything he said, it could be about anything. You could.
Yeah, but I don't care.
Yeah, you can. So if you want to ask any questions, type them in Slido. And whilst I'll just give you a moment to do that. But let me just share something that maybe, you know, if you've thought a little bit about what Chris has said and you think, do you know what, maybe I need to think a bit more about this. Let me tell you about something we've got coming up after Easter. Sorry, there you are, Chris, again. That's back in the good old days. It's not the good old days, though, is it?
No,
right.
Well, hey, I had a good time. But I like I said, if you ask me, have I got a better life now than then? Absolutely, definitely. You know, because it wasn't all good.
No.
By far.
Look at that. And just to say, so we've got a course called Christianity Explored starting on Monday, the 19th of April. And actually on that course, it gets the chance to look at an eyewitness account of Jesus' life for yourself. Mark's gospel, it's the shortest of all the gospels. And you can kind of have a look at some of the stuff that Chris has found for himself. It's sort of a 7-week course. It's on Zoom. You can find out about it at the Surrey Chapel website, but it's free to come to. You're not expected to pray. You don't need to know anything. You can just have a look for yourself and have a look at the evidence. And if you can come to the first one, and if you think it's not for you, there's no pressure to come back. So have a look on the Surrey Chapel website if you are interested to know more about that. And we have got a few questions coming in, Chris. So I will, let me ask you a few, and then, right, let's have a look. Have you struggled with anger and aggression since becoming a Christian?
Um, good question. I would say not really. Thankfully, it's been 30 years now. But I don't put myself into positions I put myself into in the past. I remember after I became a Christian, I wanted nothing to do with rugby. And for a year, maybe just a bit longer, I had nothing. I said, no, rugby is no good for me. And it was a pastor of the church I started to go to, a guy called John Bullock, great friend, who sort of said to me, Chris, do you know what, right? It wasn't rugby that was the problem. It was you that were the problem. And I'm not saying that probably the most difficult verse in the whole Bible for me is when Jesus says, turn the other cheek. I haven't got to that point yet, but I haven't either, thankfully, belted anyone either in the last 30 years. So I probably, sometimes, probably more, sometimes at home I can argue or whatever, but no, not like I used to be. I know what I should be, but I'm better than what I was.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So look, right, here's another question. Was your wife a Christian, and how did she react to the new Chris Jones?
Thought she was not a Christian, and neither of us were brought up in Christian homes. Obviously the chapels, the old chapel sort of system here had a huge effect on everyone. We all sort of went to church or chapel when we were kids. We were made to go, but then as soon as you get old enough, it was you sort of grow out of it. So my wife wasn't a Christian, and for the first 6 months or so, she thought I'd really gone off my head. But when she could see that the change was genuine and that I really did mean what I said, I had a faith, she started to come to church with me. And obviously she's got her own story to tell, but it was about 18 months, 2 years later, we had 3 children, and Gillian, my wife's name, she was pregnant with our 4th child, and she gave birth to her daughter Jessica. Looked a fine, healthy baby. As soon as they cut the umbilical cord, she just went purple. Her tongue was coming out of her mouth. She couldn't breathe, and she was dying. Basically, she was rushed to intensive care to another hospital in Cardiff, and it looked, for all intents and purposes, as she was going to die. That's what the nurse actually said to me. She had a diaphragmatic hernia, and they said most often, children die with this. Anyway, again, a long story short, after being, in hospital for a month, staying with my little daughter, my wife was absolutely shattered. She needed some rest. So it was Easter weekend, and I persuaded her to leave hospital just for a Saturday night at home. And on Sunday morning, it was Easter Sunday. So I said, I'm going to church. Would you like to come? And she said, yes. And again, she was just blown away in the service, and she made a commitment, and has gone on from there. She's what has she been? She's been she's sung in a group. She's been a Sunday school teacher, a youth team leader, and I'm very, very committed Christian. Praise the Lord.
That's wonderful, Chris. That is wonderful. Look, I think there is one last question I'll ask you, which it's not a brilliant note to finish on, but it's still a question someone's asked. Did you play any form of competitive sport after being banned?
Did I what? Sorry.
Any form of competitive sport after being banned?
No.
No, there we go. So look, maybe this is a better question then. Is there a particular verse that has helped you, a particular verse from the Bible that you want to leave us with that has been a help to you?
Loads, absolutely loads. But I would say one, right? John, the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10. Jesus said that I came to bring life and life in all its fullness. And I would absolutely support that verse. It's like I said earlier, it's wrong. It's, for anyone to, I want to be real here, for anyone to think that I'm going to stand here and say my life before I was a Christian was all terrible. It wasn't. I was king of the hill. I would go anywhere. There was no place I could go that, around South Wales where I was, feared anyone or anything. And there's a lot that goes with that. But I had no peace and no contentment, and there were some terrible downtimes. When I became a Christian, and when I really knew Jesus Christ and what he did for me, this life far surpasses anything I had in the old life. And that verse is absolutely, I'm absolutely living testimony that verse is true. Jesus Christ came to give life, absolute, the best life possible. So I do love that verse, yeah.
Oh, bless you, Chris. Well, look, Chris, we really appreciate you have just given up the first half of the Scotland game to join us this evening, which we really do appreciate. And I know you probably can't see all the faces, but should we give Chris a round of applause for joining us? There we go. There's people giving a round of applause. And Chris said it was the Easter weekend was a significant weekend for his wife. And obviously Easter weekend is coming up next weekend. And so if you want to join us at church, we're on YouTube, or you can come and join us in the building. We've got 4 services on Easter Sunday. We've got a service on Good Friday, and you can come and think about what Jesus' death and resurrection means and how it really does change everything. We'd love to have you there. You'd be very welcome, either on YouTube or to join us in person. But Chris, we will let you go.
All right.
Come on, Wales. Come on, Wales.
Come on, Scotland.
That's right. That is right. Me and you will go enjoy that. And everyone else, enjoy the rest of your evenings. It's been brilliant having you here, and we'll hopefully see you again at another Surrey Chapel event soon. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Andy. Bye.
Bye now.